She kept saying the same phrase every year, a little quieter, a little emptier, not because she believed it, but because no one ever challenged it. By the time I understood what it was doing to her, she couldn't stop. There was a moment, not loud, not tragic, just a moment. I caught my reflection and didn't recognize the man staring back. It wasn't the face that startled me. It was the silence behind the eyes, the kind of silence that doesn't ask questions anymore. That moment didn't come with age. It came with resignation, and that resignation had a voice. It said, "It's fine." Not in peace, in defeat. That one line had more weight than 10 years. I'd said it so many times, it started living in me like a second skin. It's fine when it wasn't. I'm okay when I was bleeding inside. No big deal when something sacred had just been stepped on. No one teaches you how language drains you, not instantly, but drop by drop. You hear about toxins in food, in the air, in water, but no one warns you about the poison in words, the ones we feed ourselves, the ones we repeat to avoid conflict, the ones we use to stay acceptable. I've worked with women who looked 20 years older than they were, not because of genetics, not because of stress alone, but because their entire vocabulary was built around shrinking, around enduring, around making space for everyone but themselves. You want to know what ages you faster than illness? Sentences that lie to your body, phrases that turn pain into performance, words that sound polite but bury who you really are. Here's one of the worst. It's nothing. It always is something. That sigh you swallow? Something. That joke that made you feel like less? Something. That apology you never got? Something. But you say it's nothing because somewhere along the way you learned that your hurt isn't worth the trouble, that your truth might make someone uncomfortable, that making peace is more important than staying whole. And that belief, that quiet, corrosive belief, steals your youth before your skin ever does. We age every time we silence ourselves. We age every time we nod when we should speak. We age every time we smile to keep the peace when we're breaking inside. Not all aging shows up on the outside. Sometimes it shows up as numbness. You stop reacting. You stop dreaming. You stop hoping people will see you because you stopped showing up for yourself. I wish someone had told me this earlier. I wish someone had said, the moment you start saying it's okay when it's not, you're not being mature. You're disappearing. But no one did. So I had to learn it the slow way, through burnout, through bitterness, through watching the brightest people around me grow dull because they lived inside a language that didn't belong to them. There's a reason your body feels heavier when you hold in your truth. There's a reason your energy drops after another forced smile. There's a reason your soul feels older than your birth certificate says. You're not just tired. You're carrying too many unsaid things, too many fake reassurances, too many nights where you said, "It doesn't matter," but it did. It mattered to your dignity. It mattered to your sense of self. It mattered to the part of you that still wants to feel alive. And this doesn't mean shouting or drama or turning everything into a scene. That's not strength. I'm talking about honesty. Real, raw, grounded honesty that doesn't flinch. Saying no when you mean no. Saying that hurt without apologizing for feeling it. Saying I'm not okay right now without turning it into a joke to make others comfortable. Because the moment you start doing that, the moment your words match your truth, your soul exhales. And that, my dear, is how aging stops feeling like slow death and starts becoming a conscious life. There's one phrase I heard my mother say all her life. It aged her before the years did, and I didn't understand what it cost her until I said it myself. In part 2, I'll show you how that single sentence shaped and nearly destroyed 3 generations of women in my family. You won't forget it. She used to say it with a tired smile, as if it made her noble, as if suffering quietly somehow gave her dignity. As long as everyone else is okay, I'm okay. I grew up hearing that sentence in different shapes. I'm just glad you're all right. Don't worry about me. You go ahead, I'll manage. It didn't sound like surrender, it sounded like love. But over time I realized it wasn't love, it was self-erasure. My mother didn't live for herself. She lived to make sure everyone else didn't feel guilty. And guilt, that was her secret disease. She wore it like a second skin. If she ever asked for anything, she'd immediately apologize for asking. If someone hurt her, she'd justify it. They probably didn't mean it. It's not their fault. I'm just sensitive. That phrase, as long as you're okay, aged her faster than the years ever could. She had beauty once, not the kind you chase with creams and needles, the real kind. Presence, warmth, a sharp wit that could slice through any room. But every time she silenced herself, a piece of that light went out. By the time she was 50, she looked exhausted. Not just physically, she was tired of not mattering. And the saddest part? No one noticed. That's what these phrases do. They train the world to ignore you. They teach people that your needs are optional, that you'll always be fine, that you'll always pick up the pieces, that you'll bend every time. She never wanted to be a burden, but the price she paid for that, she became invisible. When I was younger, I admired her strength. Now I understand it was armor, polished, polite, deadly. She died young, but not all at once. She disappeared slowly, through decades of being fine for others, of putting herself last, of performing gratitude for a life that never gave her room to breathe. I remember sitting by her bedside near the end. Her hands were smaller than I remembered, wrinkled not by time, but by holding too much for too long. I asked her if there was anything she regretted. She didn't cry. She didn't break down. She just whispered, "I should have said no more often." That moment cracked something in me, because by then I was saying the same things. "I'm just tired. It's nothing. I'll handle it." Same poison, different mouth, and I thought, no more. This ends with me. You don't need to inherit your mother's silence. You don't need to carry your grandmother's weight. You don't owe the world your exhaustion. The phrase, "I'm okay if you're okay," sounds generous, but it's a trap. It trains you to betray yourself in the name of harmony. It teaches your nervous system that safety means self-denial. It sends a message, not just to others, but to your body, that you don't come first. And when your body hears that enough times, it stops fighting. It weakens. It ages, not just in cells, but in soul. I've seen this in women who never took a day off for themselves, who thought rest was selfish, who said yes to everyone and forgot what their own voice sounded like. They were kind, devoted, loyal, but they were also vanishing, inside out. Don't become one of them. Don't wait for a hospital bed to realize you were never actually okay. You were just trained to pretend. You think silence protects you, but there's a phrase that sounds wise, and it's destroying your confidence word by word. In part 3, I'll show you the lie hidden inside one of the most praised sentences in adult life, and why you should stop saying it before it erases who you are. If this hit a nerve, it was meant to. We carry words that don't belong to us, and they quietly steal our life from the inside. Which of these 7 phrases have you said to yourself lately? Share your thoughts in the comments. Your story might be the one someone else needs to hear today. And if you don't want to miss the next truth no one dares to say aloud, hit subscribe. We don't chase trends here. We speak what hurts and heals. People love to praise it. The one who doesn't argue. She's so mature. She never causes drama. She knows how to let things go. What they don't say is what it costs her. That sentence, "I don't want to argue," has broken more spirits than you'd think. It sounds wise, elegant, like something a grounded person would say. But behind it, more often than not, is fear. Not fear of confrontation itself, fear of being seen as too much, fear of being dismissed, fear of being punished for having a voice. Let me be clear. Refusing to engage in pointless fights is strength. But silencing yourself every time conflict appears, that's emotional exile. I've met countless women who've turned "I don't want to argue" into a lifestyle. They bite their tongue during meetings, numb themselves in marriage, smile through disrespect, all in the name of peace. But it's not peace they're protecting. It's someone else's comfort. And over time, it shows. The body always knows. The jaw tightens, sleep disappears, shoulders curl inward. You carry tension you can't explain because your nervous system never got to speak its truth. It's not just emotional, it's physical. Repressed expression becomes fatigue. It becomes self-doubt. It becomes disconnection from your own intuition. And the worst part? Most of the time, the people around you don't even realize you've been shrinking. They think you're easygoing. They think you're strong. They think you're the calm in the storm. But what you really are is exhausted. Because the phrase, "I don't want to argue," often means, "I know I'll lose. I'm scared they'll leave. No one listens anyway. What's the point?" So you trade truth for quiet, and quiet turns into resentment. Resentment turns into fatigue, and fatigue, over time, turns into illness. It's not a guess. I've seen it happen. One client told me she hadn't raised her voice in 15 years, not once. She thought it made her better than the chaos she'd grown up in, but inside, she was a wreck. She hadn't been heard in so long, she forgot what her voice even sounded like. Her identity wasn't built on values. It was built on avoidance. What's dangerous about this kind of silence is that it wears a mask of virtue. You get praised for it. People call you wise. They admire your restraint. They say you're emotionally intelligent. But it's not wisdom if your heart is screaming while your mouth says nothing. Here's the truth. Sometimes raising your voice is what keeps you alive. Not screaming, not insulting, just refusing to disappear. I'm not glorifying chaos. I've seen what happens when people weaponize anger. But I've also seen what happens when people suffocate truth. And let me tell you, both can destroy you. The phrase, "I don't want to argue," sounds harmless. But if you say it every time you're disrespected, you're not choosing peace. You're choosing invisibility. And no woman deserves to be applauded for vanishing. There's a cost to always taking the high road. You end up alone at the top, bitter, exhausted, unheard. And the people you protected with your silence, they never realize what they took from you, because you never told them, because you thought that was love, because you thought silence meant strength. But silence isn't strength if it's choking you. It starts as self-respect, turns into self-reliance, then hardens into isolation. I don't need anything. On paper, it sounds admirable, independent, unshakable. But I've never met someone who says that often and actually believes it. That sentence doesn't come from strength. It comes from bruises that never got a voice. When someone tells me they don't need anything from anyone, I don't hear confidence. I hear grief. The grief of asking too many times and being let down. The grief of learning early on that needing makes you vulnerable, and vulnerable means weak. So you train yourself to want less, expect less, ask for nothing. Because if you don't ask, they can't reject you. If you don't want, they can't disappoint you. If you need nothing, then no one holds power over you. But here's the truth. This kind of pride doesn't protect you. It isolates you, and slowly it empties you out. People don't see the cost right away. You show up polished, capable, unshaken. You handle crises without flinching. You keep the house running, the family calm, the world intact. You become the one everyone leans on because you've convinced them you're fine. But inside, your heart starts closing doors, one by one, until even you forget where you've hidden the keys. That sentence, "I don't need anything," sounds strong. But strength is not the same as shutdown. Real strength allows connection. It makes room for receiving. The moment you stop allowing others to be there for you, you stop letting love reach you. And the worst part? Eventually, people believe you. They stop asking, stop offering, stop showing up. Not because they don't care, but because you've taught them you don't want them to. It becomes a loop. You feel unseen, but you created the mask. You feel alone, but you built the wall. And then the body pays, because emotional starvation doesn't stay emotional. It becomes exhaustion, low immunity, chronic tension, not because you're weak, but because you're human. And humans, no matter how wounded, still need warmth. I remember a woman, late 50s, sharp mind, iron will. Everyone thought she was the definition of power. She lived alone, by choice, said she loved her freedom, said she didn't want anyone depending on her, and she didn't depend on anyone. But one night, she told me something I never forgot. "I haven't been hugged in 6 years, and I'm not sure I'd know how to receive it if someone tried." Then she laughed, not because it was funny, because it hurt. That's what this sentence does. It convinces you to stop hoping. And once you stop hoping, the soul grows old, fast. This isn't about becoming needy. It's about becoming honest. If you're tired, say it. If you're scared, admit it. If you're craving comfort, ask for it. No one will think less of you for being human, except the version of you that was raised to believe pain must be hidden to be respected. Let go of that version. She's not keeping you safe. She's keeping you lonely. Out of all the phrases I've heard, this one cuts the deepest. I'm used to it. It sounds simple, no drama, no bitterness, just quiet acceptance. But listen closely, and you'll hear the sound of a person who stopped expecting better, who stopped fighting for more, who stopped believing they were allowed to want something else. "I'm used to it" is not maturity. It's fatigue dressed as wisdom. A woman tells me she hasn't had a real conversation with her husband in years, but I'm used to it. Another says her boss constantly overlooks her ideas, but I'm used to it. One hasn't heard a genuine thank you in her home since her kids were little, but I'm used to it. They say it with a shrug, like it's no big deal, but their eyes say otherwise. Their body speaks a different truth, one of tension, low energy, and that heavy silence people carry when they've swallowed too much for too long. This phrase doesn't just age you, It trains you to normalize neglect, to explain away discomfort, to call emotional drought weather, to call loneliness routine. That's what makes it dangerous. Because once your brain adjusts to being unseen, unheard, unappreciated, it stops noticing the damage. You start living in survival mode, no highs, no lows, just gray. And gray is not neutral. Gray is the slow death of aliveness. You weren't born to tolerate. You weren't designed to live in constant adaptation. The human spirit isn't meant to get used to being ignored. It's meant to respond, to speak, to feel. And when you start muting those signals just to keep things normal, you're not being calm. You're erasing yourself. There's a reason your body starts breaking down when your soul gives up on being heard. You stop sleeping well. You lose appetite, or find it in all the wrong places. You become tired even after rest, because rest means nothing if your life still feels like a quiet war zone. One woman told me, "I haven't been truly happy in over a decade, but I'm used to it." I didn't answer right away, because how do you respond to someone who thinks their own suffering is just a background noise? I just looked her in the eye and said, "That's not strength, that's surrender." And she cried, not because I was cruel, but because no one had ever said it out loud. She had convinced herself that adjusting was the noble thing to do, but adaptation is only noble if it doesn't require self-betrayal. Otherwise, it's just survival. And survival is not a long-term strategy. It burns you out. It hardens you. It steals your softness and sells it for fake peace. Here's the hardest truth. Getting used to pain doesn't make you stronger. It makes you forget what it felt like to be whole. I'm not telling you to chase perfection. I'm saying, notice when your standards became a cage. Notice when love started feeling like labor, when work started feeling like worthlessness, when home started feeling like hiding. You don't have to get used to what hurts. You don't have to call disrespect just how things are. You're allowed to say, "This isn't enough for me anymore." You're allowed to walk away from what drains you, even if you once begged to be there. Stop normalizing suffering. It's not noble, it's not holy, it's not necessary, and you don't need to wait until you're falling apart to reclaim yourself. You can start with one simple sentence. I want more than this, and I don't have to apologize for it. I don't need anyone to agree with me anymore. That's how I know I'm free. There was a time I tried to explain everything, my feelings, my boundaries, my anger, even my exhaustion. I thought if I could just say it the right way, someone would finally understand. But what I didn't realize then was this. The more you explain your pain, the less people respect it. So I stopped, not out of spite, out of clarity, because nothing ages you faster than constantly trying to prove your worth to people committed to misunderstanding you. Nothing drains your life more than translating your soul into a language they've already decided not to hear. I used to say things like, "It's okay. I understand. I'm probably just overreacting. I didn't mean to make it about me." All of it, a slow erasure. And for what? To be liked? To seem easy? To stay included? That inclusion came with a price, my truth. And I'm too old now to sell that anymore. At some point you realize you don't need to be invited if the table poisons you. You don't need to keep peace where your presence is barely tolerated. You don't need to stay soft for hands that only reach for you when they need something. A woman once told me, "I just want to be heard." And I asked her, "By whom?" She paused, and for the first time, she didn't know the answer. because she'd spent so long waiting to be heard that she never actually listened to herself. We get so wrapped up in the fantasy of being seen, we forget to see ourselves. That's the shift. That's what doesn't show in before and after photos. That's what no serum can restore, the quiet dignity of returning to yourself. There's power in saying less, in not explaining every decision, in not defending your sadness, in letting someone think you're cold, just because you stopped begging to be understood. That's not bitterness, it's balance. You don't have to announce your healing. You don't have to prove your softness. You don't have to say, "I'm okay," if you're not. And you certainly don't need to apologize for the years it took you to learn all this. Aging isn't the enemy. Abandoning yourself is. You want to stay young? Don't cling to your youth. Cling to your truth. Don't keep phrases that shrink you. Don't use politeness as armor. Don't call survival resilience. You're allowed to speak. You're allowed to rest. You're allowed to want more than being tolerated. You don't have to be strong the way they taught you. You can be honest instead. And in that honesty, you'll find something no wrinkle cream can give you. Peace. Not the peace that comes from silence. The peace that comes from not needing to explain your silence. Now they know. The 7 phrases weren't just words. They were cages. And you're not here to live in a cage. You're here to live.